and welcome to the Center for Children, Families, and Workforce Development podcast at the University of Montana. I'm Zach Reamer. My guest today is Maria Walker from the BIA Rocky Mountain region, and we're going to talk today about the process of assessment in Child and Family Services. I hope this episode will be especially helpful for those of you who have just started a job working in child protection and find yourself wondering how to effectively complete an assessment. I also hope that after hearing some of the expert advice that Maria has to offer, you'll feel more confident and eager to engage in this important work. Okay, let's get started. Maria, thank you for being my guest today. Would you start by telling me about yourself and also some of the work that you've done?
Okay. My name is Maria Walker. I am a enrolled member of the Gros Ventre tribe in Fort Belknap. I actually graduated with my bachelor's from the University of Montana in 2004. I worked for my tribe beginning in 2004 for 5 years as the Title IV-E social worker, and then I went into child protection for 3 years, and then from there I applied for a job with the BIA. So I was selected to work in Lame Deer. I began working in Lame Deer September of 2013. I worked here for a year. Then I went to Crow Agency, worked there for 2 years as a lead social service rep, and then transferred into the regional in February. So I've been at the regional office since February of this year, and am currently detailed out here to Lame Deer for approximately 60 days. My last day out here will be Friday, and then I'll be returning to Billings.
Wow, so you have quite a few years of experience, and I'm imagining that a big part of your job is writing assessments. Could you tell me what an assessment is and why it's important to your work?
The assessment is when you get a report of child abuse or neglect, and it's the evidence and information that you gather on the incident, on the children, the parents or guardians, the home, all the circumstances surrounding the incident, and then you use that to make a decision on whether you're going to file on that child and take them into protective custody, or if you're going to let the child remain in the home and do a safety plan. That's what the assessment will tell you is, all the evidence that you gather. That's the information that you get on what decision you're going to make.
So what is the purpose of an assessment? Like, who reads it? And I'm also curious about how long it takes to typically complete one.
Well, once we get it written, and we give like 36 hours, that's our timeline in the BIA, is 36 hours. And what we do with that is we cross-refer to law enforcement. We cross-refer to medical or other CPS agencies. Law enforcement is usually when there's a criminal aspect to it, where there may be a criminal investigation that might need to happen. So it's cross-referred there. And then if there's other CPS agencies, if the child isn't enrolled, if they don't live on the reservation, so they don't qualify for our services, then what we do is we refer it to the agency that would have that case.
So there really could be any number of people in a variety of agencies who could read your assessment.
Yes.
So how do you actually assess child safety? And how do family strengths factor in, and how do you factor in trauma as well?
Well, you look at the family dynamics of the home. Do they have a support system? What are the risk factors? Are they going to be safe if they remain in that home? We look at the parents. Are they able to parent in a safe manner, where the child won't be at risk? We look at what resources do they have available? Are they willing to work with you? Are they willing to access their resources? And then the child, you look at, do they need medical? Do they need behavioral health? Do they need services like STEP or DEEP, to determine where they're at in their growth and their development? So you look at everything and what you can provide to that family to make them stronger and able to remain together.
So then what are the factors that you're looking for when you do an assessment?
Well, every case is a little bit different. The main thing that I look at is, of course, the safety of the child. And the variables would be like, have they had prior referrals? Does this family have prior history? What is the history? Drugs and alcohol, their sobriety, the parenting style. Are they able to protect their children and keep them safe? Is there family to support them, or friends or community support, to give them that little bit of a boost or support to keep them going in the right direction? And I also, are they willing to work with you? And some families aren't, they're hostile and they don't want anything to do with you. And so those cases are a little bit more difficult because you have to kind of treat them a little bit different. But the ones that are willing to step up and acknowledge that, I haven't been the best parent, I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to accept your help to help me change, then those are a little bit easier to deal with.
So it sounds like it can be really challenging. So I'm wondering what advice you might have for a new worker, because I imagine the process of documenting what you see is really important. So do you have any advice for a new worker to help with the process of assessment and documenting effectively?
Well, I know something that was really drilled into me was, if it's not documented or written, it didn't happen. So when you're doing these assessments, you're telling a story. You're telling a story to someone who was not there, where you're giving them the whole picture so that when they read that assessment, they know what happened, they know what the home looked like, the demeanor of the parents, the child, what you saw, what you've seen, what you heard, what you observed. You're giving that picture in that written assessment. So if you if you leave your job and somebody comes along and they pick up that file and they look at that assessment, you've painted a very good picture of what you observed, and that person is able to read that and say, oh, hey, I know what's going on with this case, or I know what happened on the previous referral, I'm reading this assessment, and so that can help them pick up the case and go on where you left it.
Okay, so one thing that I have heard is that you should show and not tell. And that sounds a little bit like what you were talking about with writing a story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so could you say more about that, maybe in an example? When you make an observation of something, how do you make that into a story, and what aspects do you include?
Well, like say you go into the home. So like I respond to such and such a home located on such and such address, street, town, whatever. As I pulled up in the driveway, there was law enforcement waiting for me. I spoke with Officer John Doe. He explained to me why they had called us, what the situation was. I observed the house to be, windows broken, the door kicked in. One thing I always do is I take pictures because pictures speak volumes. If you miss something on your assessment, those pictures will help tell your story as well. So I'm a big one on pictures. I take pictures of everything. So I would explain the home, the outside, when I walk into the home, what I observe, where the kids are, what the home looks like, where the parents are, or whoever else is in that home. I'd put my observations, there was food all over the floor, mud and dirt, appeared to have not been swept or mopped. 10-month-old baby with just a diaper on that was filled with urine, crawling around on the floor that was dirty. Other child in the back room where a window was broken out, mattress on the floor. Child only was dressed in a t-shirt, no pants. The temperature outside was 50 degrees. This home did not have power. Or, that's the kind of story that you're telling, what you observe and what you see in that home.
So you must really need a sharp attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not simply saying the house was dirty and the family was present, but you're saying this is how the house was dirty, you describe that, and also so-and-so of the family was here, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So then what kind of codes or guides are you using when you're writing your assessment?
Well, we have our FAST system, and it's the data system for the BIA. And so when we get these referrals on the computer, it's called a service request. And what you do is you do the application and you do the service request. You make a case. You do the assessment in there on the child. For each child, you do one for the parent. So your assessments are going to look a little bit different, but on the service request is where you're going to put, what the report was, and then down below on your findings is where you're going to do your what you observed when you went out and when you investigated, who you spoke to and what you did on that case, and that part goes into the service request. So part of it in the FAST system is like questions. There's a generic template in there that you're going to answer. What does the family need? Do they need transportation? Do they need hygiene? Do they need behavioral health? And then there's a part, on the service request where you're just going to put what you observed, what you saw, and what you intend to do on that case.
You have something of a guide in this process, because I imagine it might be pretty intimidating for a new worker who's never written an assessment before. But is it right that there is sort of a guide that they can go back to follow the instructions in some sense?
I would say there's not really a written template. Well, I want to take that back because we do have a template for babies that were born meth affected or drug affected at hospitals. We do have a template for that. And that template can be used, for just regular CPS referrals as well.
Okay, great. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears here a little bit and ask you about something called differential response that the BIA uses in child services. Could you speak to what differential response is and how a child service worker would use it?
DR is it's kind of an agreement that you make with the family that they agree to work with you. The allegations aren't serious enough for removal, but serious enough to warrant intervention of some kind. So the court is not involved. You do not file an affidavit or report to the court. You don't have court hearings. They agree with you, you agree with them. You draw up a plan, and we call it differential response. And it's in effect for 90 days. That means in 90 days, the parents have agreed to correct the situation that got CPS involved to begin with. And so on this DR plan, you're going to sit down with the parents and you're going to go over their strengths, their weaknesses, and you're going to draw up a plan together to address the concerns. And then on our DR plans, it's parenting or substance abuse, going to recovery, whatever, checking in with you, bringing in their documentation, UAs if necessary. And then also there's a clause that, if they fail to comply, or if there's another CPS referral received on that family within 90 days, then we have the right to go ahead and file in court or keep working with them. So they know all this up front. And so when they sign that agreement, they're aware that, if they don't work with you, then you can file, or if there's a new incident that you may file and it may end up in court and their kids may be removed. But we give them that chance to work on themselves and make things better on their own.
So DR is sort of a partnership with parents, which seems to set it apart. But how else is it different? How is it better? And how do you know when to use it instead of a more traditional approach?
Well, DR we use in the less serious cases. If they don't have any CPS history, if they're willing to work, and that, with little monitoring, they can correct the problem that led to CPS being there in their lives. And it also empowers them. It gives them back that power, like, hey, I know I messed up, but, this is my chance, and I'm going to do what I need to do to keep my kids and parent my kids and it's a voluntary thing, and you're giving them back their power as parents rather than the old way, where you just went in and said, hey, you've done this and this and this. We're taking your kids till you get better, and then when you're better, we'll give them back. So less trauma on the family and the children.
Yeah, and that's definitely the goal. Less trauma for the child, but maybe also to increase the opportunities for a family to stay together.
Correct.
Okay, so you're using differential response. You're working with the whole family. What are you looking at? What are the types of factors and strengths that you're looking for?
Well, every situation is a little bit different. One of the strengths that I look at, do they have some kind of spirituality in their life? Do they have a support system to go to? Do they have friends, relatives, somebody who can pick them up if they're feeling like they just can't do it, if they're having a bad day? Those are some of the strengths I look at as the parents. And then the children, I look at the relationship between the children and the parents, and are these parents really concerned, or do they really want to be better parents? And then then I look at the kids. Do the kids, how has this affected the children? Are they going to be okay with their parents if you leave them in that home? Are they going to continue to nurture and grow with that little bit of support? And then knowing that there's 90 days that you have to work with them, are they going to be okay beyond that 90 days? Are they making active efforts to correct the situation? I look at all those, and then are they checking in? Are they checking in? Are they coming in? Are they bringing in their documentation and, sending their kids to school? So you just, you kind of just continue to look at everything as you go along.
Yeah. So what I like about this approach is that it seems to assume that people want to be good parents, and it's giving them the chance to do so.
Right.
All right, so to wrap up our conversation, what are the last words of advice to a new social service worker that you have? What are the things that you wish you would have known when you started on how to do an assessment and use differential response?
I guess when I started, I was just kind of like thrown in on the tribal system and said, sink or swim, And so I wasn't really trained, and I didn't really ask questions. And so I think one of the things is, write a good assessment. Give a picture of what that family's about, and recognize their strengths. I know a lot of times too, we don't know what these families are dealing with. We can get a picture, but sometimes we don't know the trauma. We don't know what they've been through. And so when we walk into that home, what is normal for them may not be normal for us. And so to put those biases aside and to kind of look at the picture from their viewpoint, and not to judge them based on our what we think is right and wrong, but to see where they're coming from, and to recognize that and to respect that, and also just make them feel like they're worthy, they're okay. You're not going to judge them. You're there to help them. You're a tool in their toolbox to help them reunify with their children, to keep their children, and you're their helper. You're not this person that's going to sit back and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, and I don't like the way you clean your house, or I don't like the way you dress, or that kind of thing. And just meet them at their level and give them that respect.
So I have to say, I came in knowing not a lot about the assessment process, and I found a lot of that information very valuable. I definitely learned a thing or two. And speaking about learning things, the goal of this podcast is to support people like you who are out in the field, the ones who are doing the important work of child protection. We want to give new workers great advice, put expert knowledge into the hands of parents, and deliver new ideas by reporting on the information that you want to know. So if you feel like we're missing important topics, or there are just questions that are left unanswered, please reach out to us and let us know. I want this podcast to adapt to the needs of the listener, and the best way to do that is to hear directly from you. Send an email to us at ccfwd at mso.umt.edu. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to browse the website for a ton of great resources, links, trainings, and more. Just go to health.umt.edu/CCFWD. All right, everyone. That's all for our short episode on assessment. I hope you were able to extract one or two valuable lessons. Thank you again to Ira Wolf for our music. Thanks to our wonderful guest, Maria Walker. And thanks to you, the listener, for the impactful work that you do every day. This is the Center for Children, Families, and Workforce Development podcast from the University of Montana. I'm Zach Reamer, and I hope you do something to take care of yourself this week. I'll see you next time.